It doesn't matter what you are. Punks, skins, rastas, mords, rockers, Keith Chegwin even. Everybody everywhere, stop smogging and pay attention to me. Because if you're a wild-eyed loner at the gates of oblivion, then hitch a ride with us. Because we're riding on the last freedom moped out of nowhere. And we haven't even told our parents what time we're coming home. So, pull on your dancing trousers and get down to the total and utter king of rock and roll, Cliff Richard!
Got myself a crying, talking, sleeping, walking, living doll. Got to do my best to please her just 'cause she's a living doll.
It is that time of the morning and that time of the week where we welcome Mr. Mike Porky Parry into the studios for the first time. We'll be back, of course, on Thursday night. A very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
A very good morning to you, Mike, as well. And, you know, that's just those opening sequences there. I'm absolutely shocked. Rick Mail has died.
Yeah.
And I have to say that, you know, first of all, it took me by surprise, but he was my favourite comedian.
Was he?
And one of the reasons was, well, I loved his character in Blackadder. Blackadder was the funniest comedy series in my mind of the last 25 years because of the genius of, what's his name, you know. Well, you know...
Rowan Atkinson?
Yes, Rowan Atkinson, that's right, yeah, who kind of co-wrote it and starred in it. But Rick Mail is one of his sort of, occasional guests, Lord Flashheart, Wolf, as Queenie and all that kind of stuff, and his, his flirting relationship with the Queen of England, much to the distress of, what's his name? Rowan Atkinson, sorry. And I thought it was brilliant. And the other reason I loved Rick Mail was because he was in so many different ones. I loved the old De Bastard,
you called him that on Twitter, and of course everybody jumped all over you because he was actually Alan Bastard.
Alan Bastard, that's right, yeah, Alan Bastard,
whereas you had actually spelt the word out. That was the whole joke of his name was that it wasn't actually Bastard, it was B''S-T-A-R-D.
Bastard, yeah. Well, I only called it Dustard, that's right, because, it was a long time ago and all that kind of stuff, but I was well corrected by a lot of the listeners, but my point, I thought that was very funny because it was so politically incorrect.
Yeah.
But it illustrated perfectly what many years later we found to be the truth about MPs, that a lot of them were fiddling their expenses, that they were in the House of Commons not doing any political work, but going out and eating big lunches. Didn't care about their constituents, spent their nights in London nightclubs, having improper relationships with members of their staff and all that kind of stuff, and it all came to be true, and he spotted it first. But the main reason why I really loved him was because a lot of comedians who, when they get to the top, use their fame, which in turn is power, to deliver a political message, because they feel that they're on a soapbox then and have the right to tell us all how to live our lives. And when we're talking about it, Mike, because of the scandal of, what's gone on with new press regulation bills and all that kind of stuff, Rick Mail seemed to stay away from all that and just make us laugh because he was a funny man and a very, very brilliant comedic actor and writer, and he didn't get involved in all that kind of stuff. For that reason, I loved the boy, and I'm absolutely shocked that he's died
at the age of just 56 as well.
Yeah, and I can admit I can admit for the first time he's younger than me, barely, but younger than me, and it's come as a terrible shock because all the pictures which our listeners who are listening to us now will see in the morning will be of him walking his dog in a park in London, looking very jaunty in a pair of shorts and a denim jacket and a hat, at a nice angle and all that. 24 hours before he was found dead. It's an absolute tragedy.
Well, nobody knows. I mean, even his wife says that he may have had a fit or it may have been his heart. We just don't know.
She said he had a very strong heart. She says he got a very strong heart, but who knows what happened. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading an interview he gave back in March, I think it was, the Daily Mail, in which he was talking about, how happy he was, because, of course, he had that terrible quad bike accident,
That was 98.
Back in 98. But they very nearly switched off his life support system because he was only,
in a coma.
I think it was 5 days into a coma.
Yeah.
And he said, he was so delighted to have come back to life that, slightly maybe like the way your attitude is to life because of what happened to you.
Yeah.
Where he said, literally in my 40s and 50s, I didn't have any of this kind of, midlife crisis. I didn't have the male menopause. I didn't get depressed about anything because I was just happy to be alive.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I was just under 50 when it happened to me, and you're absolutely right. You get within 36 hours of thinking it's all over, and he wouldn't have even had the chance to think that. He was in a coma. He just woke up suddenly and found, wow, he's got a second life and all that. But that was a terrible tragedy. It was a quad bike, wasn't it? Overturned on a slight rise on his farm in Devon. But he came back from it all. I'm absolutely shocked, honestly. Everything I saw him ever do made me laugh, and I thought he was brilliant. Even quite recently, didn't he do a beer advert where it was all very, you know,
I think
bursting
he did,
with pride and all that kind of stuff?
Was it Bombardier?
Bombardier, I think it was, yeah. And I'm absolutely shocked. It's terrible. It just shows you how fragile life is. Because...
Well, you know, there's a funny story that I should tell you, which you may think is terribly ridiculously narcissistic of me, or not.
Not at all.
But when the young ones,
you can be narcissistic, Mike. I mean, I've seen you do it all your life.
Because one of us is always being narcissistic. Normally it's you.
No.
But the young ones kind of burst onto the scene. I was very much just out of university, I think, and it was an amazing show. It was an incredible kind of groundbreaking series.
I'm not sure I ever got into that because it was all a bit grubby for me. They lived a sort of pretty grubby lifestyle.
Well, they lived this terrible life in this house where basically, I mean, I've described to you before where when I was a student, we lived in this house that was
revolting.
It was above a crockery shop. And
like
we literally
10-week-old pizzas stuffed under the bed and all that kind of stuff.
But there was a couple of the beds that were held up by the legs had fallen off, so they were held up by massive jars of Branston pickle, empty, I should say. But you know, the huge kind of catering size jars, right? And we had this crockery shop underneath, which was a disused crockery shop, but it was all new crockery. So basically, whenever we needed more plates, we just went down to the shop and brought more plates up. And so we never washed anything; we just chucked it all out in the back garden. So
sorry, how many plates did you have in this flat?
Well, it was an infinite number.
Well, didn't the shop downstairs realise that their plate supply was running low?
No, it was like an abandoned shop.
Oh, really?
You're not listening to anything I've said, are you?
An abandoned shop?
It was an abandoned shop, and the property that we were renting was above the abandoned shop, and there was a door down into the shop, and it was like a place that used to sell...
So you used to steal all the stuff in the shop?
Well, we didn't steal it because it was there. It was just already there for us. We had already got access to the place.
What's this got to do with Rick Mail?
Well, what it has to do with it is that myself and a mate of mine decided that this is such an amazing kind of situation, the way that we all live. And there was one guy who was a vegetarian, who was constantly kind of, smoking roll-up cigarettes and was very depressed all the time. There was another guy...
Why, because he was a vegetarian?
Well, I don't know why he was depressed. I mean, it's a very complicated subject.
Vegetarians do get depressed,
well, some people get depressed because they eat meat as well. I mean, it's not, the purview of vegetarians. Another guy who was a bit of a biker, a bit of a lad, who would sort of be completely different from everybody else. And then the rest of us were just kind of, what you would call normal students. And
the biker, did he have a bike?
He did have a bike, yeah.
How did he afford that if he was a student?
Well, people can afford things when they're students.
I don't think they
grants.
can. I don't think they should.
Well, in those days, you could get a grant for being a student, right? So you got a grant.
You're supposed to pay your grant on books and feeding and accommodation, not buying... Is
that what you did when you were a student?
Yes, that is absolutely
really?
right. Not buying...
You didn't spend it all at the student bar?
No, I didn't, no. Not buying up souped-up motorbikes, go roaring around the West Country.
Well, it wasn't really a souped-up motorbike. It was like a Honda 250 or something.
A Honda 50.
I wouldn't call it souped-up. But anyway, myself and one of these guys put together a play and sent it off as a radio play and sent it off to the BBC and said, this is something that we think would be, suitable for your audience. It's based on a real life situation, and it was very similar to the young ones, right? And I'm not saying for a second that
what was the dialogue like in the play?
Very similar to the young ones.
And what was that? I mean, explain that to me. I wasn't a great fan of the young ones.
Well, okay. Well, if you've never seen it, we'll play some of it out for you. But it was just kind of slightly anarchic. There was lots of shouting, lots of stupid situations where the vegetarian guy would burn his bean stew once again for another night, or somebody would chuck some meat in it and say, well, we're going to eat that. It was just, these four guys always at each other's throats the whole time.
Sounds good.
Very similar. Anyway, about 2 years later, the young one suddenly appeared on TV after I'd got this rejection letter from the BBC saying, no, thank you very much, we don't really think this is suitable. And, I'm not saying, of course, I mean, Rick Mail was a fantastic talent, as was Edmondson as well, and I'm sure that they didn't nick it, but you wonder whether the BBC took this and went, this is quite a good idea. Maybe we should give it to some of these young, talented comedy writers and actually make something decent out of it.
Well, there's been allegations of all this sort of thing happening over the years. People sending ideas and they get rejection slips, and 5 years later, wow, well, that's very similar to the plot of the idea that I sent to.
And I'll never know whether that
broadcaster.
happened. And it could just be a coincidence because maybe a lot of people were living that kind of life.
Just think how your life would have changed if somebody at the BBC had suddenly taken up on your idea, produced a TV series starring Rick Mail. You'd now be a superstar writer. And you might have written a lot more since, you know what I mean?
Might have done, yeah.
So instead of boring the nation stiff by talking into a microphone like you are tonight, you may have been able to sit there quietly.
Fortunately, I've fallen on my feet.
Not bothering anybody and scribbling out, daft dialogue, which would have kept you going for years. Because once you get one successful series, it don't matter after that. you just write any load of rubbish you like, but because your name's on
And
it,
they
you've
just
had a
keep
successful
retreading it.
series. Yeah, people do it. Yeah, well, that's very interesting. Very interesting
It is indeed.
Gives me a new insight into you.
Yeah, well, there you are. So there are still things you don't know. But we're listening to some more of Rick Bale coming up later on in this hour.
Yeah.
And, of course, we are very sad that he's passed on.
terribly
But
sad.
as I was saying earlier, I'm sure that Rick Bale is exactly the kind of guy that would like you to celebrate rather than mourn his death, even though he died at the age of 56.
It's very hard, though, isn't it? When people say that, celebrate a life rather than mourn a death, that's very hard in the hours after you lose somebody like that, because, A, I feel very sorry for his wife and his family and all that, but B, the nation has been deprived of a guy who was genuinely, I thought, a ray of sunshine in our lives. We all have miserable lives, most of the time.
Well, you might have.
Well, you do. I mean,
I have a very happy life.
no,
actually.
you're balancing all the old various responsibilities you have and trying to hide one from the other. Don't know what sort of a life that is, mate, but I don't have to do all that. I don't lead a miserable life, but what I'm saying is that I have my responsibilities to people in life, and it's hard to live up to them sometimes with the expectations that are invested upon me and in me. But, Rick Mail, he made you feel better. He was a great guy.
Now, well, I'm going to try and make you feel better, because all you've been doing is moaning all day about the weather, and Mike Porky Parry's going to be telling us what he's got to do to try and keep himself cool in these thundery times. This is TalkSport.
Flash by name, Flash by nature. Hooray! Where have you been? Where haven't I been? What? Who is that?
I don't know, but he's in your place.
Not for long! Thanks, bridesmaid, like the beard. Gives me something to hang on to.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, Rick
That's
Mail,
a little flash art.
Blackadder 2.
Here's a favourite quote which I asked our producer John to dig out. He asked Stephen Fry's character, Lord Melchett, still worshipping God? Ha ha! Last thing I heard, he started worshipping me. Ha ha ha!
That's actually very good.
Yeah.
And he did that. That was the Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Melchett. He was the sort of
That's right.
the ridiculous sort of God-fearing type, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But anyway, listen, Rick Mail, we're going to be playing out lots of that over the course
Exactly.
of the night. But you're saying that you're not a miserable so-and-so.
No,
You've
I'm
been
not.
doing nothing but moaning about the weather to me
Well, what do you
all
expect
day.
me to do?
Well, I don't
I've
know.
had a headache all day. I've been depressed. I feel like,
Depressed about what?
Well, there's a cloud hanging over my head of low pressure or something like that. Or is it high pressure? I don't know what it is when it's muggy.
Well,
and
it's low pressure
low
normally
pressure,
when it's
low pressure. There you go.
When it's have you not got a barometer at home? If you
Yes,
get depressed
I have.
by low pressure,
No, I have. I've got.
Well, how do you read it then?
I'll tell you where I got my barometer from.
Yeah,
I
where?
got my barometer from Euro 96.
A barometer shop.
No, Euro 96, right, when I was a bigwig within the football authorities.
Oh, when you worked for the FA?
I was a bigwig within the
As
football
Mr.
authorities.
Brazil would say, opening the door for people.
No. And for services to football, as I...
They gave you a barometer.
Yeah, they did. As I departed... No. As I departed and went, back into the realms of journalism at the highest level, I was presented with a barometer. It's a beautiful one on polished wood, and there's both a barometer, which you tap like this, and then, the needle moves round,
Right.
tells you what's happening.
Well, why don't you do that
And-
to find out whether it's high pressure or low pressure
Well,
instead of asking me?
I forgot to look at it, that was all, because I was, forlorn.
Yeah.
Because,
Is it inscribed with anything?
well, it's got a UEFA 96 thing in
Well,
it.
shouldn't it be
'cause that's the
inscribed
last
to you,
time,
though?
That's the last time I worked for them. There is an inscription on it to me, but I didn't want to boast about that. I didn't
Really?
want to say that,
Well, what does it say?
Well, to Mike, your friends at the Football Association, all
From
that
the
kind of
FA?
stuff. Not
This
necessarily
is
from
where the
FA.
money goes,
Not-
isn't it?
Not
This is why
necessarily from the FA.
grassroots football is suffering in this country.
Anyway.
Because they're giving gifts to people
Excuse
like
me,
you.
can I just explain, right?
Go on.
So, this morning, I was on the breakfast show, obviously over in Rio. All the boys out there doing a great job and all that, and I was...
Sounded tip-top, by the way, didn't he?
Yeah, Al?
Oh, yeah.
Al was in great form.
You said he was starting the show at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, no, he was
Amazing.
No. People make insinuations about Al. Oh, well, he'll have just come out of a champagne bar and walked in.
Yeah, but to be
That's
honest,
rubbish.
so what if he has?
No, it didn't matter. I mean, Al's a top professional, man,
Yeah.
and he was in great form. And anyway, the point of my story is, I realised from the moment I came out this morning, which was about 5:30 yesterday morning, that there was something wrong in the air, and like I got double vision for a minute, and then I felt depressed, and I felt like somebody was hitting me on the head with a mallet, and then I realised that there was no, I did. What are you laughing at?
I'm thinking of the image of somebody hitting your head with a mallet as you're walking around.
It was like that, and then I suddenly realised there was a low pressure zone hanging over me, and I
was this while you were driving around?
Well, no, this is literally just going down to the car park, the underground car park. I suppose the lower I went, the more the pressure was wearing on my head. And then
I don't think the pressure gets any lower depending on the height that you're at.
It felt like it did, and I got in my car and came here. And then, of course, going home, the sun was coming up, or the sun had come up, actually. It was about 9 or 10 o'clock then.
Yeah.
And then I had to go out again.
Hours. It's been up for hours by then.
Yeah, probably has. And then I had to go out again, and I had another job at lunchtime, and it ended up with me in central London, literally at high noon.
Yeah.
And only
It was beautiful then, wasn't it? Gorgeous.
It was horrible.
I was down in Sussex.
It was horrible.
Sunny weather.
Only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun, and I was trapped in the midday sun in central London, and I thought I was going to melt. I mean, it was awful. I was on my hands and knees.
Oh, well, you're not in a place where there was any air conditioning.
Oxford Circus tube. Well, I was, that's where I was working, in an air-conditioned studio, but you have to get from there to home, and
the tube can be a little overbearing when it's hot. Because,
it's dreadful.
Although I got on the tube tonight, because I arrived at London Bridge tonight at around about sort of 7:30, 8:45. And literally, I couldn't believe the amount of rain that was falling.
No.
Because I popped outside before I got on the tube for a quick cigarette, and incredible, absolutely incredible rainfall.
Well, also this evening, coming back here to see you, roads closed down in, Stockbroker Old Surrey, because rain had accumulated in the dips of the roads. And
really?
I had to make 2 or 3 diversions. That's why, I didn't get in.
Your car will be smoking again, won't it?
Well, it might be, but I think all the grease has been burnt off now. But anyway, look, the point is, how can we get over this? And, people have been tweeting me saying, you'll come up with some mad idea like shoes made of ice.
Yeah.
Well, it's ridiculous, ludicrous. But I have to say this, and this is a sensible idea. If we can make jackets which are supposed to keep you warm in cold weather, why can't we make jackets that can keep you cool in very hot weather?
Well, they do make jackets like that,
what?
Don't they?
Like what?
Don't they make these new kind of Gore-Tex jackets?
No,
that
I'm not talking about that. You
mean like a refrigerated jacket?
Yes, exactly. You know when you get a bottle of wine out the fridge sometimes, it's not quite cold enough, you can get one of those wrap things
like
that you
sleeve.
Put around. Yes, sleeve, that's right, which you get out the freezer, because that's got frozen material in it.
Yeah.
And it instantly...
Well, otherwise known as water.
Well, no, it's not. They're like...
No, it has. It's got water in it. No. And you put it in the freezer and it freezes, and so it's got ice around
They're little pellets. It's not water. They're little pellets, tiny little pellets, which freeze
what are they
better
made
than
of,
water.
Then?
Well, I don't know, some substance that freezes. But anyway, look...
It's water.
No, they're not.
Of course it is.
The point
why would it be anything else?
Just shut up for a minute with you. Let me get on with it. Right, so the thing is...
you are in a bad mood, aren't you?
You put the sleeve onto the bottle and it gets instantly colder. Now,
you could just get a really big sleeve for yourself and put it in the freezer.
No. You see,
could just put it on over your head.
Why can't you just listen sensibly to my idea before you reveal your total
I think it's a great idea.
I'm just saying, to being able to understand
I think it's
anything.
a great idea, but it's almost like putting some lagging around a heater,
no,
except
it's not,
in reverse.
Because it's not going to be a coat. This is going to be a vest, okay?
All right.
And it's a vest that you put on underneath your shirt.
Yeah.
And that vest...
It would look a bit like a suicide vest, wouldn't it?
It would look a bit like a suicide vest, but it would only be as thick as an ordinary cotton vest.
Right.
Because, the principle of... hot blanket.
Yeah.
Is it called a hot blanket?
You mean an electric blanket?
Electric blanket, that's the one I was looking for. Yeah, electric blanket. Now,
all blankets are hot.
When I was a kid, right, we used to have an electric blanket. We didn't have any heating in the house, okay? And this
no heating at all?
No, not until I was about 10 or 12.
Did you have a fire?
Yeah, I had coal fires. Right. Yeah. But I mean, there was no central heating. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
So in our bedrooms, where there was ice frozen on the inside of the window, as you had in your house.
Yeah, I did. We didn't have
it.
any electric blankets though.
No,
we
did. The problem was the electric blanket had wires in it, which made it uncomfortable to lie on. So it was always a bit of a.
Well, you're supposed to put it on top of you, not underneath you.
No, you're not. Put it on top of you. You electrocute yourself. You have to. It's supposed to. No, it goes on. It goes under the cotton sheets.
I would never be comfortable with something with wires coming out of it.
Well,
that's actually plugged into the wall, made of some synthetic material.
The point of my story is, with modern technology, why can't you have a vest that's got wires running through it like that? Okay.
Well, you couldn't walk around with a vest with wires in it, because somebody would shoot you. They'd think it was a suicide vest.
No. They'd be so thin that they would just look like a stripe in a shirt. You see what I mean? Like you get a striped shirt.
Yeah.
It would be a striped vest. That's all it would look like.
Would it be attached to a battery of some kind?
Yes, that's right. That you'd plug into your...
If I saw somebody walking down the street wearing one of those, I think I'd be in touch with the local constabulary.
But you wouldn't see them wearing it, because the point is, it would be battery under a shirt, okay?
Oh, under
but
a shirt,
you'd have a
okay.
little battery attached to your belt, and that would power it. That's one way.
People would be terrified if they saw people with batteries attached to their belts in this day and age. I'm sorry to say.
No, that's one way of doing it, right? To have a heated vest. But the other one, which I think
It's
is
a cooling vest, surely. Well, could it do both? Could it
What-
be
what
a
did
hot-
I say?
You said a heated
No,
vest.
no, I'm sorry, I meant a cooling vest.
Yeah.
A cooling vest. I'm
Right.
sorry, I'm getting confused because you keep interrupting me. No, or the other one could literally be a vest, and again, very, very thin, but with an infinitely thin lining of material in it, which, you're absolutely right, you put in the freezer, you take it out, and it stays cold for an hour to allow your body to assimilate to the temperature outside when you go out.
And what do you do with it once it retains a normal temperature then? When it becomes normal, what happens then? Do you take it off?
No, you keep it on because it's just a normal vest, that's all, okay?
Or wherever you go, you just say, do you mind if I put my vest in your fridge?
No, you don't, you see, you're being stupid again.
I'm not.
The point is, have you never understood the principle of a vacuum flask? Now, you think, because you are a numpty, that a vacuum flask is only to keep hot coffee in.
No, I know you keep things hot or keep things cold.
Exactly.
Whichever you like.
Exactly. You can
Yeah.
keep ice cubes in a vacuum flask and
You
they
can.
will not melt.
Yeah.
So, what you do is you get a scientist somewhere to apply the scientific principle of a vacuum flask to a vest,
Yeah.
okay? And therefore, it stays cool for as long as you've got it on.
And if it rains on this battery, what happens then?
Then, no. The ones with the vacuum flask principle don't have a battery. So if they don't have a battery, you can't electrocute yourself, can you? Okay? Right?
It sounds very complicated.
No, it doesn't. And the other thing is, it's another stupid thing of you to say, because you're always trying to pull my ideas to pieces, because you ain't forward-thinking enough to be able to think of these things, that even if you had a vest with a battery to power the refrigerator effect within your vest, because it'd be exactly the same as the back of a refrigerator, but much, much thinner and smaller, obviously. But the point is, if you had a battery, are you telling me that it's beyond the wit of man, with the scientific principles these days, to protect that from the rain, when these days you can actually use a mobile phone underwater?
I've never used a mobile phone underwater.
You can use a mobile phone underwater.
What would you say?
Well, you wouldn't say a lot, but what I'm saying is, mobile phones are now completely and utterly waterproof,
Are they?
and you can, yes. I mean,
try dropping yours down the toilet.
No, but you can take a mobile phone into your swimming pool now and take a picture underwater of your girlfriend or something like that, I mean, it's different, isn't it?
There's laws against that kind of behaviour.
Well, you know what I'm talking about, or you can take a picture of anything you like
I just
underwater.
want to hear you talking to somebody on a phone underwater.
No, I
That'd be
didn't say
tremendous.
you'd be talking to anybody on a phone. Supposing you actually like fish, you could jump into a lake or something and you could take pictures of the fish underwater, which is a bit different to taking pictures of fish when you've caught them and they've got a hook in their mouth, okay?
Yeah, you jump into the water with your underwater vest on, which keeps you cool, with your phone you can talk on. Staggering stuff from Mike Porky Parry. There'll be more coming up next on TalkSport.
Right. Now, there's not much time, so if you'll sort of strip off, kneel down doggy style. I thought if I sort of launched myself from the bookcase.
What do you think I am? Some sort of cheap prostitute?
Not at 5,000 francs a throw. And it's double for S&M. No, I don't want S&M. I was just recounting the rates.
I am Grimhild Kleist of the German Green Party.
I see. Well, I don't mind. My mummy was always on at me to eat my greens.
Alan Bastard, the aforementioned, not D. Bastard, as you would call him earlier.
How many complaints do you think you'd get if that went out today, new? Huh?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you'd get any, would you?
Well, I'm sure you would. I'm sure it's a terrible, insult to women and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, it's just having a bit of fun, isn't it? And I mean, he took the mickey out of himself so completely, didn't he?
Of course.
As Lord Flashheart in Blackadder and as Bastard, the MP. I remember the very first episode was about him flogging a set of dodgy guns with bent barrels in them to local police forces. Right. When he was a businessman who became an MP and then get the contract to supply the guns to the police forces, and they were all knackered guns.
Well, I mean, as you said, it ended up being more true, or at least more of a kind of less of a parody than actually a kind of a crystal ball as to what was going to happen in the future.
Years later, we found out that MPs are just as disgraceful as all the things he got up to in the House of Commons in the fictional Alan Bastard, the MP.
Absolutely,
quite right.
We'll hear some more from Rick Mail a little bit later on. But I wanted to ask you something because I noticed something over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, go on.
The England-Honduras game was on, which was pretty awful, actually, to be fair. I mean, I sort of sat through it and was doing a lot of other things and being distracted all the way through.
I agree.
But the thing I noticed at the end most
Yep.
was, one, this rather thick beard that Stephen Gerrard now seems to be sporting, and even thicker beard that David Beckham is sporting.
The Beckham beard is
I mean, it
amazing.
looked like something like Gladiator, and I'm wondering whether, you know, I mean, obviously you're a bearded guy, and always
Yeah.
have been, and they're much thicker than the beard that you've got. But
Yeah.
what is going on? Is there some kind of, is this a
don't know.
specific type of beard? It's a really thick beard, isn't it?
Do you know what the amazing thing is, Mike? That the only time I've shaved my beard off in the last 30 years is when I've been in the Caribbean.
Really?
Because I went to St. Lucia once, I remember,
Right.
and I remember feeling so uncomfortable, you know, you know, for the first time in probably 10 or 12 years or something,
Right.
I shaved it off, and it's not easy to shave off a thick beard like
No.
Stephen Gerrard and Beckham have got. You can't just do it with a razor.
Right.
You have to cut it very short first, and then gently...
And you have to go for one of those wet shaves to do that.
Well,
wouldn't you?
yes, we have to be very gently as well, because if you don't, you tear your skin.
Yeah.
And remember, after that, I made a terrible mistake, because I was then exposed the whole of my face.
Oh, of course, which hadn't ever seen the sun.
Exactly, to very hot sun, without putting any... I didn't put any suntan lotion on it, because I thought, well, that's very white compared to the rest of my face, which is
So you thought
brown.
it would just even
I
itself
thought it
out?
would even itself up, and in fact, I'm not joking, I got a terribly blistered
I'm not
face.
surprised.
And I looked really ghastly.
Yeah.
I looked like a sort of version of Elephant Man with a pimple, if you see what I mean, you know, on my face.
Blimey.
And
you got any
it-
holiday snaps we could see?
No, I
I'd
didn't
like to
take
see
any.
that.
I didn't take any. But my face all
What were you
swelled
doing in
up.
St. Lucia anyway?
I was on holiday there.
Really?
Yeah, I went to try and learn how to go scuba diving.
Did you?
Yeah, I never got round to it.
Oh, right. What, you never got out of the bar?
Well, it wasn't so much that, but it was. Remember, I told you once that I had an adventure in a motorised canoe which went wrong.
No.
That was in St. Lucia.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because funny enough, the only time I've ever actually grown a beard was also when I was in St. Lucia, but I was there on a sailing holiday.
Oh, okay.
And about 7 of us went down
Yeah,
and actually took a boat out of St. Lucia and sailed it down to Mustique and all these places. Great fun. But because I was on a yacht, I just didn't bother shaving for
Right.
about 6 or 7 days.
Oh,
And much to my chagrin,
Yeah.
but the beard that was kind of growing in was reddish.
Oh no, it
Or
was
a reddish colour.
No, it was the other way around for me. Once I got there, I thought I'll try it without the beard, but it was a disaster, and I've had a beard ever since, because Ringo Starr once said that he shaved his beard off after 30 years, and he said the skin underneath was described by his doctor as like liver. It was so sensitive,
Ooh.
because, you know, it hasn't seen sunlight
So
directly.
this is a long time ago that you wouldn't want to do it again. Then,
No,
would you?
well, to be honest, my beard's not that thick these days, and it's as you know, it's snowy white anyway
Yes.
compared to what it used to be. It used to be like a lush, deep red colour,
Yeah.
funny enough, that you just talked about.
Right.
But look, just moving on from that. So I don't know why they've grown these beards out there. You know, I find that.
But there's obviously some kind of fashion statement being made because, I mean, it's not, as I say, it's not just like, yeah, we've already talked about the kind of the designer beards where
Yeah.
we were saying that, you know, some of these guys, these trendy guys from Brooklyn were going down to Florida and getting certain types of beards actually, implanted into their faces.
What?
Because they couldn't grow a specific shape. And you see some of
Really?
these, yeah, they've got a word for them, not trendies, but they're something like that. And they live in places
Don't
like
think
Hoxton and
Do you
Shoreditch and all
have a
that.
beard attached to your face?
Well, not attached,
Sure,
actually, no,
blimey.
like transplanted in, like a hair transplant.
That's mad.
Because they can't grow it in the shape they want it. But this is obviously a very serious kind of attempt at looking like Pirlo. Andrea Pirlo's beard.
Andrea
is
Pirlo.
like the model for it.
Yeah, who was the big French guy, the rugby player who had
Oh, yes.
like a really, Viking-like beard? What was his name?
I remember the guy you mean.
Yeah.
Cheval, I think it was.
Cheval.
Was it Cheval?
Cheval means...
Cheval.
Doesn't cheval mean dog?
Cheval means horse.
Horse, that's right, horse.
I
yeah,
was
cheval,
once quite
a
worried
horse.
when I was down in the south of France on my honeymoon, actually, and we were sitting there having a glass of brandy.
Yeah.
And I looked across at this blackboard where they were advertising the food inside.
Yeah.
And it said, and they had pizzas, and one was avec cheval les œufs. So it was basically
Horse and egg pizza.
eggs and horse. Yeah.
Sorry, dog is Xi'an, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Xi'an,
yeah,
yeah.
I remember that now. Listen, you mentioned Beckham, right? So let's just pick up on that, because I've just seen a picture in tomorrow morning's paper, and of course my team is Everton, and Ross Barkley is the great brand new
Ross
young
Barley,
star.
as you used to call him.
Barkley.
You called him Ross Barley on Twitter.
I just missed a word out. That was a letter.
K, yeah.
Missed a letter out. But anyway, there's I looked at a picture of the paper in the morning, and young Ross Barkley. I mean, look, I totally accept it's a different generation. In fact, probably 2 generations away. But he's had his left arm done with 6 different tattoos, which cover the whole of his arm from just below his shoulder to his wrist, and he's had He's had 2 skulls put on, 2
It's
red...
called a sleeve, I think, isn't it?
Is it called a sleeve?
Yeah.
OK, he's had 2 skulls, 2 red roses, Roman numerals for the date August 20, 2011. That's when he made his debut for Everton.
That's good to know that he's so numerate in Roman numerals,
Well,
isn't it?
it is, yeah. And I was there, by the way. It was against QPR at Goodison. We lost 1-0. He's had 2 red stars put on. He's had a Chinese character for the word Feng Shui Han.
I hope he's got that one right, because you know how there was some...
Yeah,
was there not somebody who... There was a story about when David Beckham got some Chinese stuff put on.
Oh, terrible.
And they put something like, you know, chicken fried rice or something in Chinese instead.
That's right. But it means to devote.
Really?
And then his first one is no notice is taken of little evil. That's what's inscribed on his arm. But when it increases, it strikes the eye. And that is a quotation from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. I mean, this
Do you
is
really
amazing
think he
stuff.
went to the tattoo parlour and said, this is what I want on my arm?
I've no idea. Somebody else must have told him. Talking about the Chinese, by the way, Mike, remember our late and dear departed colleague Norman Luck?
Yes.
Norman did a job out in Hong Kong, and Norman used to carry his own expenses kit with him. We all know what one of those was in those days. You printed your own receipts, and then you came back with a pile of receipts. And they, you'll pay like hundreds, if not thousands of pounds in those days for bogus money. It's completely illegal. But
thank God I never did it then.
No, exactly. But Norman had his John Bull printing kit, and he used to go and print his own, and he used to actually design the names of restaurants and all sorts of things. But for a bit of a laugh, because we all hated the managing editor, whose name was Struan Cooper.
Yeah.
Who was a surly, bitter little Scotsman. He's probably still alive, by the way. So if you are Struan, I make no apologies for calling you a surly, bitter little Scotsman, because
well, that's all right then.
You were pretty.
So he hasn't got any money left to sue you.
Well, can you sue for being called a surly and bitter Scotsman?
Yeah, I think you could call that defamatory,
right.
generally speaking.
In that case, I apologise to him. But anyway, the point of the story is, because Norman hated him so much, he got the Chinese guy who was putting it all out, to, instead of writing out, like, dinner orders and names of restaurants, they were all profanities. They were all, F you, Struan, and all
in
written
Chinese.
in Mandarin and all sorts of things, and, those terrible insults in really expletive-laden, horrible language. And of course, Struan had to sit there opposite the desk from Norman, and Norman would present one, and then Struan would look at it, and what was actually written in Chinese was F you, Struan, all the kind of stuff. And he'd say, right, all right, Norman, and he'd tick that one off, and then he'd hand it to his secretary.
Right.
It was amazing. Imagine if they'd been written in English.
I know.
Anyway, that's another story. The point is, Ross Barkley's arm is now... So it's a sleeve. That's what they do, is it? They have it all around. Because they've got a picture here of Jack Wilshere, who's got his... This is Ross Barkley's left arm. Who's got his right arm. The same. Now, I blame David Beckham for all of this.
Yeah.
David Beckham was the man who suddenly went crazy.
He's covered in them, isn't he? He's covered in tattoos.
Do you know he's got one right in the back of his neck, at the nape of his neck? And
Which is also Chinese, I think, isn't it?
No, it's a huge black cross.
Is it?
It's a huge black cross, and it looks like the sort of thing you'd see on in the vestry of a church, a big black metal cross, you know what I mean, with sort of expanding ends to the cross, bulbous ones like that. That's on the back of his neck, and I think he had that when he had, like, a bald head, you see what I mean? And I think somebody must have said to him, that's a step too far, because I think he's always grown his hair ever since. Yeah. And I've hardly ever seen that one, ever since he's sort of, quotes, grown up, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I mean, he was doing all this when he was England captain, and I thought at the time it was a little bit over the top. Maybe I'm of a different generation.
No, I think we both are. You look at any footballer now, they've almost certainly got some kind of massive tattoo.
Yeah.
But we've got to take a little pause here. We've got lots more to do.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. We are the two Mikes. There'll be a podcast out, of course, later on iTunes. Look out for that. Lots more to come next on TalkSport.
Once in every lifetime comes a love like this.
Just because you've done loads and loads of work for this, just because you're a creepy little swat, you've done about 50 million tons worth of work just like a girl, and just because I was so hard and sweet and cool, that I can absolutely bugger all, and you've been very good.
It's only University Challenge, Rick. It's only University Challenge. But we may not be the young ones very long.
More from Rick Mail coming up later on in the show. Mike Porky
so
Parry
should
is
be as
here
well.
with me. A lot of people are responding to your idea about the vest, David in Essex says, Mike, Porky's idea is already used in the oil industry in places like the Middle East. It was even featured on Tomorrow's World with William Woolard.
Well, there
That's
you
a
go.
name from the past, isn't it? Well, it doesn't actually elaborate on it, right? And somebody else has actually sent a vest, which I've retweeted out, saying they do make cooling vests, and it's a company called Ergodyne.com.
Right.
And it's a thing that looks a little bit like a bulletproof vest, actually.
Well, why aren't these in popular circulation then? Why aren't they in popular circulation with people like me who,
Well, I
tend
bet
to get exhausted and depressed when the weather's like this and needs cooling
Well, because
down?
you're not living in a hot country, you're living in Britain.
It was a blinking hot country today,
Well,
Mike.
not
I don't know if
really.
you've noticed. Yes,
Not
it
really.
was. And
Well,
by the way,
you've been in properly hot countries, right?
Yeah,
As I have.
yeah.
Where I mean, I was in Dubai once, and I had to go out there and do a story, and it was something like 140 degrees in the shade.
God, blimey, I was in Qatar once.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, when England played there, they played Brazil.
Yeah.
And Wayne Rooney was captain of the England team. And
Right.
I think it's the only time he captained the England team. And it was about 43 degrees centigrade,
Yeah.
whatever that is in Fahrenheit. But it was just like inhuman.
Well, it's
inhuman.
about 120. I mean, it's ridiculous,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
ridiculous. Now, here's one from Lee, who's tweeted in at IROMG. Porky is either completely insane or a visionary. Electric vest, refrigerator vest, and vests inspired by a flask, for heaven's sake. And Andy says, if I ever see Mike Parry wandering around a pool near me in his heated vest and waterproof camera phone, I'm off quick.
Yeah, well, yeah, the two aren't linked, of course, because it might be foolish to jump into a swimming pool if you've got your electric vest on.
Yeah.
Because that might cause a bit of a problem.
Yeah,
Might
you can
kill
take a picture of yourself dying.
Exactly, might
That'd be
kill
fantastic.
kill all the fish or something.
Yeah, they probably frighten all the people that were in the pool as well.
Yeah.
Now, talking about injuries,
Right, go on,
actually,
go on.
what about this story that we spotted a little bit earlier on in the
Astonishing.
day, saying that people who go into the A&E drunk actually are likely to suffer fewer complications and fewer injuries in the end from sort of falling down, because actually they're so relaxed when they do it that this is not the kind of information that they should be passing on to people, is it?
Well, if you read that through, Mike, get to the end of the report, it
Yeah.
actually says as well that once they're in casualty, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a greater chance of recovery if they're intoxicated,
Yeah.
because the alcohol, and this, by the way, is turning, as far as I'm concerned, turning medical science on its head, the alcohol protects the major organs like the kidneys, the liver, and the heart. Now,
Well, puts them in a state of suspended animation, you mean?
I don't know, because we'd need to get the report thoroughly. We're just reading a newspaper report of the report,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So you'd have to examine it. But, I mean, that to me is astonishing, because I've been told from the day I was discharged from Harefield Hospital after waiting 7 months for a heart transplant,
Yeah.
and then being told that I'd managed to sufficiently recover, through the sheer damned doggedness
Yeah.
of mind over matter, my
Yeah.
determination not to be an invalid and to get back into life.
Yes.
You see what I mean? That's
Yeah.
a sort of
And I
ruthless...
can't say. I think you can't. You can't underestimate that
yeah.
kind of power.
Yeah. No,
Because
you
I mean,
can't.
so many people I know who have been told that they've only got a certain amount of time to live if they've got cancer or
It's
something like
absolutely
that. You know, if they become so determined that they're not going to let it get them.
Yeah.
You know, the attitude. And even doctors say this. The attitude is
I totally
actually
agree.
something that helps you survive.
Of course it does. You've got to have a very, very, very positive attitude about it and not feel sorry for yourself and all that kind of stuff, and tell those around you everything's going to be well and you're going to get better. But anyway, the point of my story is, I was told, and this day now is 10 years ago, that one very big, sort of drinking session, the sort
Yeah.
of things I might have been involved in with Mr. Brazil in
Right.
the old days, which of course neither of us are involved in anymore
No.
because we're all matured and grown up and that kind
Although
of
we
stuff.
should mention that little
Yeah.
drinking session we had the other morning on Friday.
Well, that
because
was very nice.
That was not a terribly long drinking session.
No.
But astonishing, really, that you could go drinking at 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I didn't even know you could do that.
No, well, I did, because I told you these sort of things happen for market ports. But anyway, the point I was going to say is I was told one of those and your heart could go just
Right.
like that. So that's advice from a resident cardiologist at one of the world's top thoracic centres, which
Right.
is Harefield Hospital, my own personal consultant.
Thoracic Park.
Thoracic
Sounds like.
Park, you see, you've still
Did
got
that.
it. And yet this report is saying that no, if you're intoxicated, if you're bladdered, for want of a better word,
Yeah.
you've got a better chance of recovering from whatever injury you've sustained. Now, we have known for years, haven't we?
But
You
isn't
and
this
I.
kind of thing a bit dangerous to say? Because people will think,
I
therefore,
agree.
that, because one of the things that we're always being told is that we waste so much money in the NHS because people get drunk, have to get carted off to the A&E, and they're clogging up the system. Whereas if they didn't have these injuries at all, because, i.e., if they stayed sober, then the whole system would be a lot better.
I totally agree with you, but the other thing I was going to say is, Mike, that we've known for years that if you, for instance, have a fall from a height or something like that, you hear about kids who fall out of windows,
Yeah.
of their bedroom windows, but because they're children, they're relaxed, they bounce.
Yeah.
Whereas an adult would,
Immediately tense.
brace and
Yeah.
tense, and because So people who are intoxicated have got better chance of surviving a fall like that
Well, I suppose it
because...
depends how high up you are, really.
Well, of course it does, but, if it's survivable, it's more survivable when you're drunk because you are actually unaware of having to reflex or respond to the fact you're in imminent danger.
Yeah.
You don't realise it because before you've realised it, you've hit the deck, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So we've been on about for years, but this is a step on. And I'll tell you something else as well. I've been calling, another report in tomorrow morning's papers, I've been calling for years for harsher penalties against drunks.
Yeah.
Because why should drunks be treated as victims and ushered into sort of police first aid huts, you know what I mean, to be treated and then helped home, when in fact they should be fined. And I'm reading a report in tomorrow morning's papers that huge penalties will be introduced as part of a government drive to give magistrates greater sentencing powers, and this includes for cases of being drunk and disorderly. Now, I hope they are going to reintroduce the offence of drunk and disorderly.
Did they do away with that particular offence then?
Well, they haven't done away with it. It just moved off the statute book. It was no longer enforceable. In the old days, when you were drunk and disorderly, you got carted off to the nick and you got locked up for the night and you were given some breakfast, charged £7.50 and then you were let out. But there's too many drunks around in the modern day.
I suppose they can't do them all, can they?
Well, the last government said we'll go drinking till 3 a.m, right?
Well, the
And
thing is, I
therefore
mean, that's what I'm saying to you. I mean, if you can drink at 6 a.m., where this particular pub we went to opened, and it was very interesting because, you know, standing outside as we were, and we were sending out pictures on Twitter and stuff like that. First of all, there was quite a few people inside the pub, some of whom were sort of at the end of their delivery shift, some of whom were wearing suits, who'd obviously been working all night, maybe in a city company or something like that.
City brokers,
but lots of other people outside just walking to work. And the looks that we got from some of them, just because we were standing there drinking a pint of beer at sort of 6:15 in the morning, there was one particular woman, do you remember, who muttered something under her breath?
She did,
walked past,
that's right, yeah.
Treated us with total disdain, as if we were a pair of old alcoholics.
Well, you're absolutely right there, Mike, and we have to make it absolutely clear to our listeners that we didn't do this on a day when we decided to get up at 5 o'clock, meet in town and go drinking.
Finished work.
We'd finished work, we finished doing a show
and there was no more work being done that day.
No work being done, so effectively we turned the body clock through 180 degrees.
Well, as we do when we're working anyway.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So we decided to go up to the city. It was a beautiful morning, sun coming up over the River Thames. We decided to go into the Market Traders pub.
Yeah.
What was it called, by the way?
Market Porter.
Market Porter, that's right, yeah. And it's designed specially for Market Porter.
Yeah.
It's next to, which market is it?
Borough Market.
Borough Market. And we had a couple of pints because we'd been working for the last 8 hours.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Not at all, no. In fact, I was delighted that you could actually go and do that.
Yeah, I don't want our listeners to think we're a pair of dipsoaks who have to go and have beer for breakfast or anything like that. That's not the case at all.
No,
you know
it was a special occasion.
And then we found another... there was one guy, wasn't there? We walked into the first pub and there was a chap at the bar who looked as though he enjoyed a drink at that time of the morning, whether he'd been working or not.
Yes. Yeah, he did.
Who said, yes, it's all right, lads, this place is open from 6, because it was then about 20 past 6, wasn't it? We got a cab up
But then
there.
he said it shuts at 8:30, but don't worry, because the place next door opens at 7.
Oh, yeah, then, no, he gave us a route then. He said, but don't worry, the one on the corner up there opens at 7, that one over there opens at 8:30, then there's one at 9 o'clock, and you get a couple of Weatherspoons down the road.
He had his day mapped out,
He had his day mapped out perfectly, and it seemed to me like he was on a drinking expedition. Whether or not he does that every day or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was a Geordie, and I'm not saying that all Geordies are necessarily of that ilk.
I think you've made enough enemies for one night on this show. But I'll tell you the other thing was because it was of course the anniversary of D-Day. We'd done that show about your father's involvement in it, my dad's time in the war. When I got down to Sussex to see the kids, right, which was a little bit later on in the afternoon, I said to them, "So what have they been teaching you about D-Day today?" You know what they said?
No,
nothing.
You're joking.
They had not been
at school?
At school, they had not mentioned D-Day to them.
What, the 70th anniversary of one of the most important days in the history of this country?
Yeah.
Literally, probably the most important day in the history of this country since 1066.
Right.
And they hadn't even told the children what it was all about.
No.
That is an utter disgrace.
Isn't that astonishing?
Have you written to the local education authority?
I've only just found out about it on Friday.
Well, I think you should. Will you write to them?
Well, we've got a whole series of issues which we'll be addressing with the school, and that's going to be one of them.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
definitely going to be one.
What are the other issues then?
Well, I can't go into those.
Why not?
Because they're of a personal and private nature, which I don't wish to discuss on the radio.
No, what you mean is you're frightened that you're going to become public enemy number one with the teachers at your school.
Not at all, no. The teachers know exactly how I feel.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they do.
You go down there and give them a hard time on the gates?
I don't give them a hard time at the gates. That's not the way I am. But
Right.
I ask for meetings, and I have meetings,
Right.
in which we discuss the issues, because that's how we do things
Right.
nowadays. You don't go
Okay.
down sort of,
But
threatening.
you've got to
them.
make sure, Mike, that your loud and verbose mouth doesn't make your kids unpopular
I
at
don't
school.
do it in a loud
okay?
and verbose way.
You don't?
No, not at all.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't only have one speed,
Yeah.
I have several speeds.
Yeah, well, I hope you didn't go straight off to school and address the teachers after you'd had your beer
Not
breakfast
at all.
last Friday.
No, I didn't pick the kids up from school on Friday.
I
saw them later
Are
on.
you sure about this?
I'm very sure.
Okay. Incidentally, when you drink alcohol that time in the morning,
Yeah.
of course, it's a very long time since I've done it, many, many years, decades probably, I felt very invigorated and therefore found it very difficult to sleep for the rest
Did
of the day. When in fact, really, that should be a prime time for sleeping. Which just proves that alcohol, in fact, is not the cure.
A narcotic is a stimulant.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
exactly. You're absolutely right.
Well, it is for you, but not necessarily for everybody else.
No. People think if you go out and get blood and then go home, get your head down, you can sleep it all off. Not true. Your eyes are flickering around all the time, your brain's in a mess and all that kind of stuff. You don't sleep properly at all, and you wake up with phobias. And
You've got enough of those as it is.
I haven't got any of them, and I wouldn't advise.
You've got a phobia of a crematorium. You told us about it.
well-
What happened to that plan we were going to drive you around in the back of a hearse, by the way?
What, are you mad? I never agreed to a plan like that.
Yes,
I
you
never
did.
would. No, I wouldn't. Are you crazy?
We had the woman on, and you said, would it be helpful if I was to be driven around in the back of a hearse?
Well, she may have thought it was a good idea. I don't think it is. And by the way,
It was your suggestion.
I still pass that funeral parlour every night going home, and the lights are always on. That's what gets me, which means
They're busy.
The Cadaver, yeah, that's
busy.
The cadavers are
Take
in there
you as you describe it.
all the time.
You are,
and-
you're like a man possessed here.
No, what I'm saying is, I just have this terrible image of undertakers embalming bodies in the middle of the night, because that's when they get the bodies. Most people who die at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I've seen the ambulances queuing up. And
You've told us all this
I know.
already.
But I mean, it's a bit of
Well,
a.
the cure is lying around in the back of a hearse and me driving it. That's what we'll do.
Oh, you're mad. I'd never do that. Never agree to that. A, it's maudlin. B, it's weird. And C, it would give me nightmares for the rest of my life.
We can put you in one of those vests, you'll be fine. Mike Porky Parry and myself, Mike Graham, will be back with more of the Two Mikes on Thursday night, of course. We'll be starting the show at 2 o'clock that morning.